No matter which way the presidential election goes, it's safe to say that the conservative, constitutionalist, limited government, liberty-loving movement has faded from relevance, slipped into a coma from which it seems unlikely to emerge. So now what? I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Well, man, if Donald Trump were put on trial accused of closet constitutionalism, no jury would convict him based on the evidence. He managed to garner the Republican nomination without resort to the kind of high-minded principles which a handful of politicians and pundits have said for decades now are the only reliable recipe for GOP victory. And while so-called establishment Republicans may bristle at Trump's gauche manner and plebeian lexicon, they secretly revel at his practical devotion to victory alone. Now, Stephen Green, is this election year the death knell of the liberty-loving movement? Should we just give up and give in to politics as no more than the art of the possible? Or do you have a more hopeful plan?
I hope I have a more hopeful plan, although I'm not sure it's congealed enough to be called a plan yet. Maybe it's a little too amorphous at this early date. There are two eventualities we have to plan for. One is that Hillary Clinton wins, and we have to save conservatism from the ratchet effect, as Margaret Thatcher called it, where every little left-wing advance ratchets down, and the ratchet is never released. The best you can seem to hope for with a GOP Congress or a GOP president is that the ratchet doesn't clinch down any further while they're in charge. The other case is in case of a Trump win, and then we are going to have to defend principles that I believe in strongly. I mean, principles like the Second Amendment that Trump gives lip service to, but in the Monday night debate, he said he would support stripping people's Second Amendment rights for being on the no-fly list, or for a stop and frisk check in New York or Chicago. And, we'll get them off the list. They don't belong there. But we all know how bureaucracy works. That's a BS answer. We're going to have to defend the principle of free trade. Don't get me started on the, globalists are ruining the world. No, what we don't have is free trade. What we have is managed trade. What we have is China that doesn't belong in the WTO. We don't even really need a WTO. What we need is to negotiate treaties with countries that say, if we lower our tariffs, you lower your tariffs, and we'll work out the details around a table. It'll be great. Instead, we've got these massive things that, as I said, aren't really free trade. And it's showing right now. Trade this year is supposed to account for just 1.7% of growth, when in the past it's been about double that. So that the trade juggernaut is running out of steam because of all these government controls, whether they're coming from China, Washington, the European Union, or Russia. So we're going to have to defend that from Donald Trump if he wins. We're going to have to defend the Second Amendment. There are so many things we're going to have to defend from the inside that it takes a completely different tack. That's the kind of thing I'm going to worry about after November 8th. Right now, I'm in damage control mode, where I think I would rather have to save conservatism from the inside with the Donald Trump win. So I'm going to do my duty. I'm going to mark Donald Trump on my Colorado ballot when it arrives here in the mail in a couple of weeks. It's not going to be easy, but I'll tell you what, when I make that check, when I fill in that circle, whatever it is on this year's ballot, I'll be thinking of one thing in advance. Where do we go from here? And I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead yet. Ask me again on November 9th.
It's like the magic 8-ball answer. Ask again later. Yeah. Bill Whittle, I know it's hard to look past this election as immersed in the whole process as we are, but it will be over in mere days. And you, my friend, will be left to pick up the remnants of a movement that seems to have crumbled. How will you do it?
Funny you mention that. People have drawn the wrong conclusion from Donald Trump's Republican victory. The conclusion that they're drawing is that conservatism is dead because Donald Trump represents the new pragmatism of telling people what they want to hear and so on. That is not the case, in my opinion. That is not the case. Donald Trump won the Republican nomination and very likely may become president because out of all of the candidates in both parties, he's the only one that's interesting. And I really sincerely mean it. It wouldn't matter what Donald Trump was talking about. It wouldn't matter what he was talking about because he's interesting and he knows television. And 4 years ago, I said that the next president's going to come from the pop culture. Well, certainly the next Republican nominee came from the pop culture. If we don't know how to speak to people about these ideas that are so beautiful and so effective, then we don't deserve to win. And we have not been able to get a spokesman who can do that. Ted Cruz, I think philosophically, was very close to kind of an ideal candidate in that, but Ted Cruz just couldn't sell people because he didn't have the gift of communication. Which takes us to the next question. I got asked to run for president after I made that what Romney should have said speech 4 years ago, and I've played around with it with the virtual presidency. But two things are important here. One of them is after Barack Obama, and certainly if it's Hillary Clinton, anybody can be president. And whatever reservations I might have had or anyone else might have had about, I'm not qualified for this job. Yes, I am. I'm not making an announcement here or anything, but I will say this. What is the presidency? Really, what is it? The president does not sign every single check. The president doesn't take the time cards from the federal government. The president doesn't do any of these things. The president's job essentially is twofold. It's to make sure that the legislation that he's been elected to approve goes through, and stop the legislation that he was elected to not approve if he feels it's bad for the country. And of course, the other part is foreign relations. We need somebody who can defend these ideas in an articulate, funny, and even sexy way. We've got to have somebody who's interesting, who knows what they're doing. We watched the debate last night, and I saw Donald Trump drop so many opportunities to put the knife in Hillary Clinton. So many opportunities. But because he doesn't have the philosophical grounding that we have, he couldn't take advantage of it. We have a consistent, coherent, reinforcing political belief that gives us answers to questions we may not know the answer to. And he doesn't. But he is interesting, and he understands the power of pop culture. He understands the power of direct speech. He understands the power of getting down to the basics. Other countries are stealing our workers, and it's not a country if we don't have walls. People criticize him for this. This is why he's so successful. He's right. All we need is somebody who has the core principles well understood and is also interesting on TV, somebody who can pull this off.
Hey, Scott, can I throw something in here real quick? I meant to give this in my original answer, and Bill just made me think of this. Last night, watching the debate, I had just this huge holy crap moment. We've known for months now, probably since February or March, exactly who the nominees were going to be from each party. We knew it was going to be Donald Trump. We knew it was going to be Hillary Clinton. The rest was kind of a sideshow after that. But last night, watching the debate, seeing Donald Trump sell out the Second Amendment, seeing him sell out the whole post-war order, just to get a few bucks out of our NATO allies, and all the rest. And then on the other side, Hillary Clinton, pre-programmed, over-rehearsed, the original Stepford candidate, and just pure evil and lies in her soul. I watched those two on stage last night for the first time in the same camera shot, and I realized emotionally, not just intellectually, that holy crap, one of these two people is going to be president.
Scotty, I want to add one more thing. The kind of thing I'm talking about where it's not a question of being briefed for the debate. It's a question of, is this something you understand and love well enough to teach? And I thought that the one example that I think actually hurt Donald Trump quite a lot last night, I would have made a mountain out of this, when he talked about the Iranians taunting our sailors rather. And Hillary Clinton says, we're not going to go to war over a taunt. The correct answer to that question is yes, maybe we will. Because taunting is testing. Taunting is pressing. Taunting is testing. And every time we fall back and do not respond, the taunt and the provocation will get bigger. Everybody talks about war with Iran as if Iran is a giant with a giant hammer and we're a flea. We're the giant. We've got the hammer. They're the flea. They're the people who fear us. And because we do not respond to these provocations, we make war more likely, not less likely. And all you have to do is look at the history of Adolf Hitler's rise to power, and it just writes itself. These are the kind of things that a person based in the philosophy would understand and be able to deliver on, I think.
Yeah, a single French division on the Rhine in 1936
would have
could have
stopped
prevented
Adolf
World War
Hitler.
II. Yeah.
Well, perhaps it is an air castle of high-minded principles and impractical ideas. And yet, unlike the utopia of statism with its rule by aristocracy, my fantasy world accepts man's flaws and defends against them by diffusing rather than concentrating power. The pioneers saw this American frontier as like unto the New Jerusalem of Revelation, come down from heaven, living in the light of the Lord, flowing with opportunity, where trees grow with leaves that heal the nations. And in some ways, that prophetic image has played out to the blessing of many millions through better governance and an economic model that rewards those who improve the lives of others. Yet in another sense, our constitutional republic resembles another ancient city, one where men gave up building a self-aggrandizing tower to the heavens because the Lord confused their speech. They could no longer form massive, mindless coalitions. Their divisive babble drove them from Babel, and they were scattered across the face of the ground. You know, the Bible is redolent of dispersion. We learn that when man clumps up in one place, he tends to focus on the well-being of a precious few, to rebuff wisdom, to stifle innovation, to muzzle dissent, to cling to security, to sacrifice liberty. Like the garbled speech of Babel, our Constitution complicates coalitions, sets faction against faction, tangles attempts at consolidation, and generally scuttles man's endless effort to amass enough power to control the lives of others. The Constitution takes into account man's true nature and fights it to a draw, preferring governmental gridlock to lockstep conformity and servitude. But because liberty is the antithesis and antagonist of somnambulant slavery, its passionate advocates really struggle to advance it. Freedom doesn't grasp at others. It governs with an open and empty hand. But you can't impose liberty on a people who treasure the calm convenience of captivity. You can't make the slave flee the plantation. The true constitutional presidential candidate would say, "Send me to the throne so I can break off its legs and bring it to the ground. Make me the leader of the free world so I can make the world know that it's not the American president, but the American people, the American idea that leads the world to freedom." Now, buried to the neck as I am in books about the U.S. Constitution, economics, theology, biography, war, and good governance, I live in a kind of reverie, albeit one steeped in the historical lives, exploits, tragedies, and ideas of men who have shaped Western civilization. Their impact is palpable. My heart vibrates to the iron string of individual liberty. I ache for it in my ribs. I glimpse its fleeting shadow as it slips around the next corner. I pine for its splendor just over the horizon. Perhaps it is a fantasy to crave a system of governance framed to protect man against the predations of his brother, and yet to permit maximum happiness without government meddling. But I have seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I can't stop chasing the dream. And so, to paraphrase a merely mortal king, I am happy, not worried, not fearing any man. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the Right Angle team, thank you to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.
Amen.